Hey everybody, I got a video here for you today. And this is kind of a follow-up to a lot of my older videos where I talk about Abydos and the Osirion and First Dynasty and Pre-dynastic tombs in the area. Well, let's go down to Abydos today and take a look and see if we can figure out what this city looked like maybe 9,000, 10,000 years ago in deep antiquity. And I think it's really that old. I think it's just as old as Giza or Rostow, as it was originally called. But we have a lot of different periods of Egyptian history doing things in this area. But why do I think this is really old? Well, I think you need to go to the text to really start putting together the story, so let's just read a little bit. Now, one of the main reasons why I think Abydos is very ancient is because it is mentioned in the book of Coming Forth by Day, known as the Book of the Dead, and in some of the most important chapters. And I have read portions of some of these in some previous videos, but I think these are some of the most important, and they just seem to have references that are extremely ancient. And let me just read here. And this is of the receiving paths, and I believe we are up at Rostow here, and which is the ancient name for Giza. It says, a chapter of receiving paths in Rostow. The Chancellor-in-Chief, new, triumphant, saith, the paths which are above me lead to Rostow. I am he who is girt about his girdle, and who cometh forth from the Osireion. I have come, and I have established things in Abtu. And what is Abtu? Abtu is Abydos. So Abydos seems to be mentioned in the most ancient text. It is called Abtu. And I have opened out paths in Rostow, again, which is Giza. The god Osiris hath eased my pains. I am he who maketh the waters to come into being, and who setteth his throne thereon, and who maketh his path through the funeral valley and through the great lake. In reading on here, this comes from a chapter called Of Coming Forth from Rostow, and there are two versions of this chapter, and I'm going to read the fuller one. It says, I am the great name who maketh his light. I have come to thee, Osiris, and I offer praise unto thee. I am pure from the issues which are carried away from thee. I hath made my name in Rostow, when it hath fallen therein. Homage to thee, O Osiris, in thy strength and in thy power, thou hast obtained the mastery in Rostow. Thou art raised up, O Osiris, in thy might and in the power. Thou art raised up, O Osiris, and thy might is in Rostow, and thy power is in Abtu, which is Abydos. Now, the very next chapter, of going about in the underworld. Let's just read. Open unto me, who then art thou? Whither goest thou? What is thy name? I am one of you. Assembler of souls is the name of my boat. Making the hair to stand on end is the name of the oars. Watchful one is the name of the bows. Evil is it is the name of the rudder. Steering straight for the middle is the name of the matchabet. So likewise is a type of my sailing onward to the pool. Let there be given unto me vessels of milk, together with cakes, loaves of bread, and cups of drink, and pieces of meat in the temple of Anpu. So, at Rostow, it talks about a ceremony, it talks about the underworld, it talks about the assembler of souls, which is a boat, and it's kind of like a mythological journey down the Nile, which is symbolic of the Milky Way. The Milky Way is the celestial Nile. And it also talks about the temple of Anpu. That is the temple of Anubis, today known as the temple of the Sphinx. So if we still have text referring to the temple of Anpu, which is the same as the temple of Anubis, then this has to be, at least 5,000-6,000 years old, these texts, and it refers to Abydos. a great indication that Abydos is a very important, very ancient city. Now here is very ancient Abydos. And just to get our bearings here, down at the bottom, this is the temple of Seti and the Osirion. That looks exactly like the Valley Temple in front of the Sphinx today. And we have tombs and a very ancient city in this area. We have some pre-dynastic tombs. We have some tombs that should be labeled maybe as rulers of pre-dynastic times. If you look at the cartouche, here we have tombs of Pharaoh Den and first and second dynasty kings. They wanted to be buried at Abydos because it was already very, very ancient in the first dynasty. That is pretty clear. Now here is the website, and I will leave the link below. Let's just read a little bit. It says, Abydos was an important center already in the Naqada and early dynastic period. And that name refers to the time before the dynastic Egyptians, when there seemed to be kind of a localized rule and culture in this area that wasn't spread out to Upper and Lower Egypt. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. It says, extensive cemeteries dating to this time have been excavated across the site, including the tombs of first and second dynasty kings. In the Old Kingdom, the principal deity of Abydos was called Kenti Amentiu, foremost of the Westerners. And you've heard me talk about foremost of the Westerners in my Anubis video, because Kenti Amentiu, right here, Kenti Amentiu, is the ancient Egyptian name for the deity we know as Anubis today. Anubis is a Greek name. So what is the old Egyptian name for the Sphinx? Right here. It's not Anubis, that is a Greek name. Kenti Amentiu. That is the most important name you do not know. And foremost of the Westerners, of course, East and West is divided by the Nile. Foremost of the Westerners, that's how he is described, as guarding the sacred necropolis of Giza. That is a translation from the Book of the Dead, and that makes perfect sense for this 5-story tall giant. And here is a little map, and they give some tomb dimensions here and what the layout of them was. This is a pretty good website, and this gives you a little map. Middle Cemetery, Royal Tombs, those are the first and second dynasty pharaohs. And then there is the ancient town up here, and a necropolis that has some really old burials in it, and I think some clearly pre-dynastic burials. And then down here we have a 12th dynasty town, and I believe it's Senroset that is buried down here. And here he is. But this ancient town, Flinders Petrie did some excavations here, and let's look at what he found. And here's the layout of the walls that Flinders Petrie found in this old town here, and this is located right in this area here. But he has these color-coded. Clearly, they were building by different periods of time. And right in the center, this black area, that comes from the very first dynasty. And what is this structure here at the very center? This site of the main temple for the god, Kenti Amentiu. So at the heart of this ancient town, at the shore of what might have been a great lake at that time, was the temple of Kenti Amentiu, or we would know it today as the Temple of Anubis. And here's a different shot of ancient Abydos. And you notice here, this farmland in the Nile Valley, this all would have been water back in the day. So this would have been a point right here. This would have been a point. And where would that temple of Anubis been? Right here. And here, let me just show you here. This is how the landscape is. And you notice here, this in ancient times would have come up to a point, and that temple of Anubis would have been right here, pretty much exactly where it would have been today, or is today, up at Giza, on that point that would have been surrounded in water, in the exact same point. I think that is pretty fascinating. Once again, the point at Giza, here is the temple of Tep-2F, or Anpu, it is called twice in the Book of Coming Forth by Day. And this is where it would have been at ancient Abydos, on a point. And also, I want to mention here, if you go out to the tip of this point, kind of where the Great Pyramid would have been, up at Giza, right here, I think we have an ancient structure. And this seems to be carved, or an artificial, maybe an island at one point, or a point that was clearly had breakers in it for the water. And I just think that is a fascinating shape. And right in the center of that, right here, there seems to be something very ancient and lost. And here from above, let's just zoom in on this structure. And I may be wrong, but from all I've looked at on Google Earth, I think there's something ancient and lost right here in the middle. That's just the way it looks to me. And in that video I did a couple days ago about that pyramid up above the Fayum region in the hills, they said in that article that there was a similar structure at Abydos. I'm wondering if this is it, or if it's the one a little further down the shore. But once again, this to me looks like there was a structure out here at one time. And that's a fascinating shape to the end of this point in ancient Abydos. Once again, here is the ancient city, and these walls, were these right at the shore at one time, or was this surrounding the city down here? I still have a few questions, but that'll give you a look at the very ancient shoreline and a look across the Nile Valley. But here, at one time, was the Temple of Khenti-Amenti, or what we would now know today as the Temple of Anubis. And from a little higher up, what would have been really right next to the Temple of Anubis, we have this structure down here, known as the Osirion. And this is off the back end of the Temple of Seti. And this looks exactly like the Valley Temple in front of the Sphinx. The construction, perfect construction of these granite pillars in here. The only thing comparable is to what's in front of the Temple of the Sphinx, as we call it today. And I believe Seti, from around, was it 3,300 years ago, roughly, I believe he built on top of something that was really ancient and already here. Now here is a look from the front of the Temple of Seti. Here it is right here. And clearly this style is evident of the 18th, 19th, 20th dynasties of Egypt. But if you look just to the side here, this stuff out here just looks really ancient to me. It looks similar to what's on top of those unfinished pyramids, those strange, very ancient pyramids. That's just the way it looks to me. I think Seti built his temple right on top of something that was very, very ancient. And here is another look at some of the stones around this ancient temple of Seti. That is about 3,300 years old, I think. Now here we are at the back of the Temple of Seti. And here out in the distance to the north is the necropolis of Abydos. Obviously just a whole bunch of stuff under the sand here. Remains of very ancient time periods. And as we swing around, down below here is the Osirion. Only thing similar, Valley Temple in front of the Sphinx today. And here is kind of an enclosure wall with vertical water erosion. And I found this shot on Google Street View down in the Osirion. And here you see these massive granite blocks. And this is very similar to stonework you see in Peru here. But these columns are absolutely huge here. A lot different style than what's up above at the Temple of Seti. This will give you a good look down in the Osirion today. Just this impressive stonework, and here you see some of those nubs that are on stonework at Machu Picchu, among a few other places. But that is a look at the Osirion. But let's just go across here. And what do they call this mountain here that encroaches on the ancient city and necropolis of Abydos? Well, they call this the mountain of Anubis. And let me just go over to a quick article here before I wrap up. Now, this is an article by the Penn Museum. I will leave the link below. This is called Beneath the Mountain of Anubis, Ancient Egypt's First Hidden Royal Tomb, and this is a fascinating article. Here is the mountain of Anubis at Abydos, and here is a little look at the internal burial chamber and what it exactly entails in here, and it is fascinating. And here it says, the discovery of the mountain of Anubis. Among ancient Egypt's rich pantheon, the most familiar and most recognizable deity is the jackal god Anubis, best known for his role as a god of mummification. Funerary scenes often show Anubis preparing the body of the deceased for its passage to the netherworld. Seen in a form called Anubis who is upon his mountain. And remember, the temple of Teptuef is translated as Anubis upon his hill at Giza, that temple. It says, we also know Anubis as Necropolis Protector, perhaps best illustrated in the Valley of the Kings during the New Kingdom, when necropolis seals bore the image of Anubis dominating Egypt's traditional enemies. These enemies were the 9 bows who symbolized the chaotic forces that might threaten the integrity of royal burials in the pharaoh's afterlife. So, you know, people say, and they have said this for a long time, it's funny, the Sphinx, how we don't see it in ancient scenes. Well, here, the Sphinx is clearly seen in one of the most important seals coming from ancient Egypt, the Valley of the Kings, the Royal Necropolis seal. And here is the seal that was found in the tomb of Senroset III, who was buried at Abydos. They were never buried in pyramids. This is his well-hidden tomb in the necropolis seal, mountain of Anubis. That is Anubis upon his shrine, and then the symbol of the mountain. And, you know, why isn't the Sphinx shown in all these ancient tombs and scenes from ancient Egypt? Well, I think it is. People are looking for lions. Well, they're looking for the wrong animal. He's in every important tomb, and he's in the most important scenes in tombs, in the posture of what we see at Giza today, the Sphinx. Ancient Anubis was the most important god because he was the god of Giza, the original god. He had a mountain named after him down at Abydos. His ancient name was Khenti Amentiu, and there were similar temples at Abydos and at Giza. I think I've talked enough today. That's about all the time I got for YouTube. But I hope you enjoyed this video, a little look at ancient Abydos, and you all have a very nice day.